Hey everyone, thanks for joining today's session of Threat Detection Highlights. I am Ertuğ, Senior Product Marketing Manager here at VMRay, and I'm joined by my colleague Fatih, Security Product Manager, leading the product initiatives around advanced threat detection. So I'm excited to kick off the September edition of our regular series, where we cover the latest updates on malware threats and detection. I'm sure some of you already joined our previous editions. And just a quick reminder, so this webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing both the recording and the presentation with you afterwards. So you can share with your colleagues, friends, and family. So feel free to type your questions anytime. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. So let's get started. We have got a quick session lined up to cover what's new in terms of detection here in the VMRay platform. We will walk you through the new threat identifiers, VMRay threat identifiers, as we call it, acronym VTIs, that have been recently developed. Then we have updates around smart link detonation. Also, we are going to walk you through the YARA rules newly added to the platform. We will speak about some recent activities around malware families by giving you an overview before Fatih will do a demo of our new configuration extractor for Socks5systemz. So let's dive into it. Our first VTI update around reverse shells. So the careful attendees will notice this is not totally new. We developed related VTIs in the past. In March this year, we added a VTI which triggers when a successful reverse shell was opened in macOS and Linux systems. So first, just to refresh some definitions, a reverse shell is a type of shell session initiated from a target machine back to an attacker control machine. The diagram here, you can take a look. It's a basic flow of this type of attack. An attack simply, the first attacker compromises the target machine. Then it establishes a reverse connection back to the attacker. It's designed to bypass the network security measures since the connection is initiated from within the victim's network. An attacker, as the third step, gains control over the target machines and can execute commands and move laterally, escalate privileges, and etc. This new VTI is via bash on Linux. And our labs team see many times that there are attempts to create a reverse shell through command line. So we wanted to provide this visibility. We wanted to have this VTI which will recognize this type of command and trigger. And the main point is of this VTI is to register attempts to create a reverse shell and not the actual successful creations. And moving on, another VTI around PowerShell. So PowerShell has been appearing in our VTI updates pretty frequently. So not surprise, honestly, it's such a powerful tool, but that's exactly what it makes so appealing from attacker perspective. It's built into almost every Windows system and widely used by admins, and as we shared in previous webinar updates, so the malware can use it to read. For example, we had in previous webinars released some new VTIs, like, for example, a PowerShell command to read clipboard data, or tamper Windows Defender, or stop backup services when it is ransomware. So it blends in so well with normal activity. And this one, we are this time zeroing in on the use of the no profile command line parameter. So we observed this with some recent Stealer malware. I mean, and speaking about VTIs, so the behavioral signals, as we can simply put, the context is really key. So for us, a very strong indicator of maliciousness is that it's been observed in a real case. So more into that. So the no profile parameter, yes, sorry, I just slipped. So no profile parameter disables what it does actually, disabling profile scripts that usually load custom settings, and that may include, for example, that can be useful for legitimate purposes to kind of, for example, speed up the startup. And however, you know, I mean, this can be exploited to avoid detection and via bypassing the security scripts. And that may include logging, for example, which is important for us. And on its own, no profile isn't malicious, which is why you see the score here 2/5. But when used alongside with other suspicious behavior, like, for example, we mentioned this in our previous webinars, execution policy bypass, it becomes a really red flag. And the key is to look, again, as always, the context and watch for unusual patterns. For example, if you see this at odd times, this is worth investigating. So this was it around VTIs, and let's move forward with smart link detonation updates. Here we have one update around SLD rules, which is kind of standing out. We would like to talk a little bit about it. So here is what attackers are doing, what they were, what we see they did. So to hide their malware in plain sight, actually, they are using GitHub comments. They drop a file in a comment, which automatically generates a link that looks totally legit in GitHub's CDN, Content Delivery Network. So this sounds like a flaw on GitHub site, but whatever, what can we do? So in this case, the repo owner that you can see on the screenshot was Microsoft. So because the domain is GitHub, and most email security tools probably would say, just based on URL's reputation, that is you know, clean, and let it through without a second thought. But here is the catch. I mean, those tools don't look at what's behind the link. So in this case, for example, it was a zip file delivering a malware named Lua. And as far as we know, this has not been sorted fully yet by GitHub. So that's where our smart link detonation comes in. And instead of just trusting the URL, SLD will detonate the link if it follows the same pattern as you can see in this URL. So we will be able to catch the malware behind the scene. So just to mention other recent additions, we are not here, you know, mentioning all of them, but one is about Microsoft Forms, and which is known to be abused. So we updated our rule set by including that one, and the other one is the MoEngage, a customer engagement platform. Again, this was kind of the feedback from our customers, so we added these to our SLD rule sets. Hope you're enjoying the content. Now we are moving to YARA rules, and we will also talk about some recent updates around specific malware families. As you can see here on this slide, we are looking at 4 different, actually 3 malware here. One is the infection technique, GrimResource. So let's start with Atomic Stealer. It's a macOS stealer, also known as Amos. And we are seeing new variants pop up as shared by various research blogs we have been reading. What to tell here? I mean, there is a basic attempt at anti-analysis. And the malware uses the system profiler tool to check if it is running inside VMware specifically. And if it is, it shuts down. I mean, obviously. And while this evasion technique is not super advanced, it's enough to make like analysis a bit more challenging. And as for how it's distributed, what we know is it's seen to be bundled with fake installers for popular applications like Photoshop or Microsoft Office, or interesting Tor browser. So sometimes even distributed via malvertising as well. A quick mention at the order of this malware typically rents it out on Telegram and offering a web panel with a disk image installer. What's also interesting with some of the newer variants is that they are starting to use Python scripts with built-in stealer functionalities. So that script kind of throws up a fake dialog box that looks like part of the macOS interface, and kind of to trick users into giving away their credentials. And we see more and more stealers targeting macOS devices. So that's an interesting one, and we implemented a new YARA rule to detect atomic stealer during the static analysis phase. So speaking of Python, a Python-based malware here that brings us to Empyrean. You probably heard of it. It's an open source. Sorry, just a second. Excuse me. It's an open source and available on GitHub, and we hear a lot about GitHub these days. And the GitHub page was updated about 5 months ago, so it's still, let's say, in active development. So making it a kind of a threat to keep an eye on. And by the way, this is really showing how important to monitor GitHub as part of your external threat intelligence efforts. So it's a good source. So Python-based stealers like Empyrean, why they are using it? Because it's easy for attackers. It's kind of, for somebody who is into a little bit coding, it's simple to learn. It's highly customizable, and compared to as a service, malware as a service, where criminals need to pay for malware, open source tools give attackers more control, and they can tweak the code to fit their needs. So Empyrean's key features is actually Discord token theft. So Discord isn't common in enterprise setting, I know, but with millions of users, especially in gaming and even among security professionals, it is still a valuable target. So attackers can hijack these the accounts. So it's not only Discord. As all stealers to Empyrean also has the capability to steal browser data. And we also see some persistent technique, for example, like modifying the startup registry, as well as some anti-analysis debugging methods applied by Empyrean to avoid sandbox analysis. So there's a new YARA rule for this one as well. So next is a ransomware. You have probably seen it, this one, that's kind of mimicking Conti ransomware, right down to the ransom note with just the name they swept out. They're clearly leveraging Conti's leaked playbook, including their tactics and tools. But one key difference is Monti using the Action 1. So a remote management tool for remote access on top of any desk that actually Conti likes using it, which is something new. And they have been seen exploiting vulnerabilities like, for example, Log4Shell in VMware environments, so which is reported in a few incidents. And now, even though ransomware is easier to spot, not stop, compared to stealthy malware, it's still worth analyzing samples, and it's still worth extracting IOCs and tracking evolving techniques. And I will share some source at the end. So you can go ahead and check out the latest target organizations of Monti ransomware, especially Canada and the US seems to be standing out. And again, we have a new YARA rule for Monti ransomware. So the last but not least on my part is the GrimResource. So as you know, also we had chance to speak about this with Fatih last year, but still this is a relevant topic. So Microsoft shut the door on macros for documents, right? And attackers really had a much harder time getting in through that route. And this is just one workaround that they developed. And also North Korean actors have been observed to leverage this one. So, I mean, overall, the summary of this was GrimResource isn't really a specific piece of malware, but rather a technique that leverages MSC files to execute arbitrary code. And once a user clicks on a malicious MSC file, and there is a research by from a South Korean company, so it was kind of also mimicking an Office document. Anyway, it allows to execute code in the context of the Microsoft Management Console, or mmc.exe. So this is obviously ideal for evasion, can replace the macros. So overall, to stay ahead of this, we have rolled out a new YARA rule. And with that, I would like to pass the mic to Fatih. And stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Arturo, for this great presentation from your side. And I like the couple of comments you made there around GitHub links, and they're becoming more and more important. I'm just going to be sharing my screen right now. I don't know if I'm sharing the correct screen.
Yes, we can see the slide, Fatih.
Okay, great. So can't see mine. Sorry. How about now? Now you should be able to see.
Yes, Fatih, we can see the slide.
Okay, great. Sorry for this hiccup. Normally we don't go through this, but my part is already not going to be that extensive from the presentation part, but there's something I want to share around the malware family that we just mentioned in the beginning, which is Socks5systemz. I know some of you have already heard this malware family, and the particular reason that we want to talk about Socks5systemz is we have a new configuration extractor for this recently, alive malware. This is basically a proxy botnet malware, and we also have, in the industry, have some level of visibility into the number of infections worldwide. Thanks to the Shadow Server Foundation, they have a pretty good, neat visualization of the target countries, and the effective systems number seems to be around 200,000 all across the globe, and it just primarily targets the Asia continent, but it seems to be reaching far beyond that continent, and you see a lot of different countries are also being listed there. And what I want to share about Socks5systemz today is it's a malware family that utilizes a lot of proxying techniques via the Socks5 protocol, as it's indicated in the name, and this allows it to reroute the network traffic and through multiple stages of its C2 servers, basically. And in each stage, we've seen it helps in obfuscating its communication channels, right? And it just makes things a lot more difficult to detect. And the malware is particularly designed to evade detection through multiple stages in execution, and as they use DNS-based resolution for its C2 servers as well. And another interesting thing for Socks5systemz is its use of a domain generation algorithm, right? DGA, and DGAs are basically techniques that has been used by malware authors to generate a large number of domain names in a pseudo-random manner. And in this case, the domain is going to be listed in the analysis report that we're going to share in our demo session. And it's going to be a DGA domain. And this DGA thing allows the malware to continue functioning by resolving these generated domains via its multiple stages. If a particular domain or IP is blocked in the perimeter of that enterprise that is targeted, the malware can quickly switch to another generated domain, and that just actually allows it to maintain its communication with the command and control, and it just allows to send through commands and receive them. And on the flip side, the actors using this one have gone the extra mile to monetize what they have, and they've set up a full-fledged proxy service, and which will allow them to offer subscriptions and management tools in this case. And this is obviously for anonymity, but this is also something to pay for, right? And attackers are already tricky with their commercialization aspects. And one last piece of information, if this was a pattern that we observed around the executable file names of this file, you can see online, soon, off, job, and crt.exe. And this is pretty trivial to detect and also change from the malware author's perspective, but it's still something that we see and we wanted to share today with you. And going to the next slide, we will have actually a demo session of a Socks5systemz malware analyzed in VMRay platform, and I will go through the report's artifacts and show you what are the techniques that are being used by this malware. First thing to notify after we detonated this malware and just let it run for a couple of minutes, VMRay platform was able to get us the correct verdict as malicious, and it classified as a bot because it's a bot. What is more interesting here is that we were able to correctly put on the correct classification name, as you can see on the top left side, as Socks5systemz, and there were a couple of reasons for this, and I will get to that in a second. Continuing on the report, we see that it's a Windows executable file, and we see two important remarks. And first remark is about the anti-sleep anti-sleep mechanism that was triggered in that analysis. And this is simply because this malware authors are trying to evade the detection mechanisms that only have a couple of minutes or maybe even seconds, and they delay their execution time by a couple of hours. In this case, it's 1 hour and 20 minutes, 23 minutes to be correct. And we were able to lower this time frame into 21 seconds, and which is actually a unique capability that is coming from our technology, which is hypervisor-based sandbox. And another thing that comes with that technology is the auto reboot functionality that is also unique, and which we are able to trigger a reboot to uncover the persistent mechanisms that was wanted by the malware authors to be only executed in the later stages of that execution period. And we were able to see a couple of these persistent mechanisms in the environment, and we were able to trigger a reboot, and we will see it in a second. Moving on to the report, we have something called VMRay threat identifiers. As Ertuğrul also mentioned, these are the threat identifiers that are actually detecting static and dynamic behaviors that we see throughout the analysis stages of this particular sample, right? We have the YARA rule match on this, which actually exactly allows us to classify this malware family. But we also have the extracted configuration out of the sample file, which is really tricky, but it's the most certain way for you to actually categorize or classify this malware as a certain family, right? We will go into a second what exactly is embedded in this configuration, but before I do that, I want to sweep through the rest of the VTIs. First, we have a lot of antivirus matches throughout this analysis, and we were able to see a malicious host or a URL is being contacted, and we were able to actually catch this by a reputation mechanism that we have, and We also have seen a lot of defense evasion, which is actually the malware sample is trying to access the physical hard drive with its actual direct integration, and additionally it sends control codes to a driver, and also again it just delays the execution, which is more than 5 minutes when we trigger this thing. I don't want to go through all of them, but as you can see, we can actually detect a lot of things regarding the defense evasion, persistent mechanisms, and a lot of network connection and obfuscation, as well as other stuff. But before I continue on to the screenshot and the process behaviors, I want to talk about what this malware configuration that we extracted from this malware family is. And here we have a couple of different things, and you can see that we have socket and URL information that was extracted from within this sample. And the extracted values are really important because you may not even see these things happening in the dynamic analysis, because maybe only a couple of them are already executed and the rest of the IP addresses are not being used because it's not been blocked, right? So in the first stage, it just actually has a couple of different IP addresses to contact its C2. But in the second stage, as you can see, it's just that proxy activity is going to happen. But what's also more interesting here is that DGA is showing itself in here with the domain name. It starts with CKB and continues with .NET. And it's something that's to be resolved via its first stage communication with its C2, and then it continues from there. We have the screenshots, as you can see, that we continuously take throughout the analysis time frame, and you see the UAC prompt, as well as the machine is actually shutting down and again continuing to the execution. We are also able to show this in the process graph. As you can see, the sample started with some random name, created a lot of child processes, which probably didn't achieve anything, but it was according to plan. The real nasty stuff was actually going to happen after the reboot. As you can see, in the number 5 process is going to be doing a lot of stuff. Let's go to the network tab to see which domains and which countries this is actually contacting. All we see here is a lot of GET requests to a certain IP address, random looking one too. And there's also a lot of DNS requests in here, and we can get the TCP sessions along with it and download it and further analyze it in case it just gets a lot of different files from it. Going to the behavior tab we showed in just a second ago, what we have here is every single detail with every single process that's been seen in this analysis timeframe. You see the first 4 processes were actually preparing the environment that is targeted, and it was getting it was showing some level of behaviors around the host behaviors and none in the network one. And it was then started in the process 5 to show more than 1,000 host behaviors, as well as a lot of different network behaviors. So there's a lot of communication over there. Going down, we can see a lot of extracted function strings, which are actually extracted from the function call logging. And we can continue to look at the memory dumps when they're actually dumped and what was the reason behind it, whether it's a content changed or first network behavior, as well as the system information. And we can actually see that it's trying to sleep here, and we can actually see how this is being done with the parameters and function calls that was triggered. Even if we cannot identify a certain behavior to be malicious, it's going to be there with our unique function call logging mechanism. You can download it and you can utilize it every otherwhere, because it involves a lot of different important things that are going lower level part of the operating system. And I'm not going to continue to the network behavior here because we already showed this, but in the files tab, we can see all the sample files, dropped files, and embedded files, and they have separate classifications and verdicts, as you can see in here, which is pretty important. because we want to separate that, detection mechanism from the files that are actually benign and lying in the operating system, but has been contacted by a malicious process. So we do not actually involve them and classify them as malicious like the rest of the other products out there, which is really beneficial for the incident responders. Going into the AV and YARA tab, we take continuous dumps in the analysis stage, and the certain reason for this is to bypass this the packing mechanism. It could be like a lot of obfuscation, encryption. Since the operating system won't be able to execute these things, it doesn't make sense to sweep the original sample and wait until it decrypts itself. And that's going to be in the memory, the gold mine is. And if you look at the malware, you see all of the rules are actually either matched on the memory dump or the function strings. That is really interesting. And it's not the original sample that you uploaded. And that's why this is really important functionality that just saves a lot of time, right? And actually gives you the correct wording. The last remarks I want to make, it's the IOCs tab, and in there we can see all the IOCs relevant to it, and the IP addresses, the process names, and the file names, along with its related VTIs, right? It could be the extracted via the configuration extractor, or it could be something else that is related to other VTIs. And this is also a unique capability that we match TTPs with the IOCs, so you have a more actionable IOCs at your hand, and you can use it through automation. And if you want to just deep dive, you can unfilter all of these things that we just hide from you and look all the registry keys that we think it's clean, but it could actually indicate something more important if a human analyst would looks at it. So with that, I'd like to conclude my demo part of the presentation and go back to the actual presentation. And in there, this should be the correct screen again. And
yes, Fatih,
yeah.
we can see the slide.
Yeah, thank you. Again, there was a lot of research involved in this presentation, and I'd like to share all of these valuable resources, then thank the community for all of their contributions going into all of these research. And you can also find the detailed reports and insights on the following links, as you can see. And additionally, you can find public sample reports on our VMRay threat feed, including the detailed Socks5systemz analysis that I just demonstrated a minute ago. And again, I appreciate your participation in today's webinar. And before we go into the Q&A session, I have some exciting updates to share. And we're currently offering a limited time promotion where new users actually can experience our services for a full 3 months at no cost. And this is a fantastic chance to explore our cutting edge threat analysis functionalities and technologies. If you're interested, you can simply use the code that you see in your screen. It's detection3 to claim your 3-month free trial. And again, you can feel free to contact our team via the free trial form on our website, and we'll assist you in getting you started. And we can also now proceed with the Q&A session. And please don't hesitate to ask any questions, and we're here to answer. I guess no one has questions. I'll just give it a minute.
I actually see a raised hand, but would it be possible for if you can type? I see one attendee raising hand, but we would see it if you type it in the Q&A. Or if not, you can reach out via our website. That's also possible. Let's wait for some time. We will manage to get that question. All right. Probably
Yeah.
later we will get that question.
Yeah.
By different channel. Yeah.
Rafael, thanks. Thank you very much, Rafael, for joining us. And hopefully in the upcoming months, we will share more news as we do always. And thanks for joining. Yeah, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you very much for arranging this call, Ertuğrul. And I
Yeah,
hope,
thank you, everyone.
yeah, I hope we can see you in the next ones. See you. Bye-bye.